I think we'll get started here. Hopefully everyone on Zoom can also see me and hear me. If you can't, or if there's any issues, please send us a message on the chat, and Jennifer will try and deal with that on the Zoom side. We currently have about 15 people at the Opera House, and we have 34 people on Zoom. So outnumbered here, but that's fine. And sorry for the short notice on this little presentation. I know everyone was circulated as owners in Spring Creek, plus everyone around Spring Creek was also circulated across the creeks and the entrance. To anytime the town of Cameron does zoning changes, any affected participants get notified by the town in writing. And we've been working on these zoning bylaw changes for a year and a half, just so everyone's aware. I have done 2 other open houses on Zoom last year. A few of you might have participated. And we've been working with the town of Cameron on these amendments all through that period of time. Unfortunately, it all got delayed because everyone was they were working on the Three Sisters land use bylaw amendments over the last year or so. And we all got put on hold. But we've been working now directly with the town of Cameron planning to make sure the amendments that we want to bring forward make sense for the town, make sense for Spring Creek. And the majority of the amendments that we're talking about today are to do with the 2 hotel sites at the entrance to Spring Creek, and also bringing stage 4 into the fold of Spring Creek. When I got my approvals in 2006, Spring Creek had 4 stages of approval. Now it wasn't one blanket approval. My area's redevelopment plan was a blanket approval, but the zoning had to happen in 4 stages to allow us time to reflect, to allow us the time to make sure the transition was right, traffic counts and stuff that was concerns of the homes at the edge of Spring Creek were being met. They weren't going to be exceeded. And so there's some criteria in my bylaw that I had to meet for my next stage to be brought forward. And I could not bring stage 4 forward until 2021, which is why we're bringing it forward now in 2022 as part of these amendments. So we're doing these all at the same time. So that's just a little background why we're here today, why we didn't really get to council last year because of all the work they're doing with Three Sisters. So now we're in with the town and we're looking at our amendments and we're trying to fine tune these amendments. And I know a lot of concerns. I know people today, I'll try and speak to them is about parking, about heights and stories. And I'll try to explain a little bit where we came with all these amendments as we go through. And again, I think you all know me. I'm Frank Kernick, the developer, in case you don't. I think everyone does, but just in case you're a new person here. Is that? Oh yes, and just another thing, everyone here, if you don't mind holding off till the end, I'll try and run through these slides quickly if you have any questions. And I'm also everyone on Zoom, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll try and deal with them when we get to the end, if that works for everyone. So first thing, gonna figure out just how to make this work. Again, a little background I like to always do, and that is, the history of Spring Creek, and mostly people know the history here, but originally it was my grandfather's dairy farm in 1927. My grandfather moved here with my grandmother, and they had the Cameron Dairy supplied all the milk to the miners. I bought it off the family 20 years ago. I can't believe it's been 20 years off the family in 2002. And most of you probably know I've been developing a Cameron for a number of years, Canyon Close, Eagle Terrace, Grotamont Village, and also Invermere prior to buying this land off the family. Was working on those projects. The master plans approvals were completed in 2006, but we worked with the town from 2002 to 2006 on fine tuning those master plan area redevelopment plan amendments. Then again, that was approved in June, I think it's September 2006. And there's a lot of iterations through that plan as we worked with the town. And one had to do with these 2 future hotel sites, how they became the way they were. And I'll tell you a little bit of that in the future. And upon completion, I'm allowed 800 to 1,200 residential units, and we're asking up to amendment from 200 to 250 hotel rooms. To be honest with you, we are never going to hit 1,200. The max we'll probably get is 1,000 residential units. It's more around the 950 to 960. We now know our densities that we've been building out Spring Creek, and we know the areas, what we can build for an apartment building, a condo, a townhome on the blocks. So we know our densities we can do. When we first did their redevelopment plan amendments, we had architects try to give us a range. They're guessing, but we didn't really know. Now we know every building, how many roughly we can do on a site. Same thing with the hotel. When we designed that, it was a guess, you know, it's roughly we thought you get about 200 rooms. We know we get a little more there and we get a lot less over here. So that's why we're now in our stage 4 and we're just looking to fine tune our area redevelopment plan densities and amendments to make sure it coincides with what we actually can do here. Our traffic report we just had updated for the town for adding stage 4 and adding hotel rooms. We're still way below the 3,000 vehicle trips a day that was required to exit onto Main Street. Reason why that number was picked is when this was a campground that had 220 mobile homes and 300 campsites, that was roughly our traffic volume. When I bought the land off the family, it was roughly just around 3,000 vehicle trips a day. So my commitment to the people at the front was the lot said we wouldn't exceed those traffic volumes, what was there today. When I built that roundabout and the road in, of course, it just plummeted the traffic volumes down from what they were to what they are today, because a lot of people still use that entrance. And that was a big concern, was traffic even back in 2006. And that is one reason the bylaw amendments I'm looking for the creek setbacks is my original plan had this road right in front of us go all the way along the creek as it does in front of the Malcolm Hotel and straight to Main Street. So I only had one big hotel site. Malcolm was a big hotel site. The town asked me to put more traffic calming measures in, and that was, you know, raised road crossings and a big chicane in that road. And that works. You know, that's probably the slowest corner in Spring Creek. You know, everyone's scared to go around that corner, right? And that was the intent, is make everyone go slow. But it took by one big hotel site and split it into 2 hotel sites. Instead of one 20-meter creek setback for the building, now I have two 20-meter creek setbacks for the building. And in my bylaw at the time, for that trade-off, I asked them that I could have a 15 creek setback. And that's, but the wording in there was may, not shall. And if everyone, I know Hans knows the words because he was on council. May and shall are 2 big different words. May means I might get it. Shall means I will get it. And for me to spend $100,000 to design each per hotel, to design them to a development permit stage with a shall is too much risk. So I'm asking council to change the word from may to shall, so there's some certainty, and not going to planning commission or something and having, you know, not knowing and spending all this hundreds of thousands on design. So that was one of the big changes on the hotel site that happened from 2006 to what I'm requesting now. What did I press this one? Which way to point? Okay. Again, just a little bit of history, and I show up a blow up of someone is teasing me. I was wearing my glasses. I can't see anything without my glasses. This is the blow up of the entranceway. Before we finished this road, this is roughed in at the time. And a lot of you might remember that before we took down my uncle's house that overhung the creek. You know, so when I'm showing people what was there before, because this is a brownfield site, it's a redevelopment site. It's not raw land where, yes, you should ensure there's 20-meter creek setbacks. This is a redevelopment site. The old farmhouse is right here. That's a picture of the old farmhouse. It was added on as I was a kid and changed when I was a kid. And this is my dad and my uncle. My dad, my uncle there, my grandpa. We had a dump truck, and this is the farm field right where the Malcolm Hotel is right there. My grandpa on his milk wagon. My grandma with a barn in the background. There was no stormwater management back then. The cows were pooping in the creek. You know, it's a farm, right? Back in the day. You know, everything we've done in Spring Creek has been to deal with stormwater management, and even go to the back end of the trail park. You see what it was like when it's a trail park. You know, I mean, the roads, everything runs into the creek. There's no storm management, no storm drainage. So the biggest thing we've done in Spring Creek with redevelopment, raise the roads 4 feet and created a whole stormwater management system. All the roads drain into stormwater treatments, underground ponds that goes into things. So that's the biggest thing we've done is protection of the creeks. Moving all the development, 2.5 kilometers of development has been moved away from the creek edge, roads and campsites, and brought in with trails and repairing zone that we've reclaimed with shrubbery and stuff along the trail's edge. So same thing on the hotel site. You can see the development that was there, my grandma's cabins, the old shop, the old farmhouse, my uncle's house, and campsite.
Hello?
The water's edge.
Sorry.
Cut all the grass right up to the water's edge. Anyway,
I don't know if you can hear me, but the Zoom presentation is not
when
updated.
you're asking for a creek setback relaxation. Everywhere else in Spring Creek is 20 meters, as I committed to do, except for the Opera House. This is the other area that had a 5-meter creek setback relaxation because we couldn't get the building on without that, right? So this is historic. Wanted to build a replica of the old Opera House at Heritage Park. And that was important to get that relaxation here too, to be able to have this facility. You know, again, you see that as you build every phase of Spring Creek, we're adding more trails along the creek edge and more environmental creek setback. As you see, repair an edge on this drawing along here. We try and rebuild that creek edge. So development so far, again, we introduced the ARP in 2004. It was approved in 2006. We started construction in 2006 on stage 1, and that went through for many years, slowed down through the recession. And stage 3, we got zoning on, and brought that into the thing around 2018, 19. Now we're in for our last phase, stage 4, to bring it into the ARP. You can sort of see the faint line of it on the to the right here. This is stage 4 we're just bringing in at this time. And that's rezoning it from mobile home park to Spring Creek comprehensive residential. So again, we're unit count. One thing we are amending in our ARP, which isn't in the current version with the town, is taking our unit total from 1,200 maximum down to 1,000, because I know I never built 1,200. Add in from 200 hotel units up to 250. And tourist homes from 300 to 325. And the only reason we're doing that is some of these buildings that we have along this side that are generally tourist home designated, we're generally designating the townhomes along here, looking to designate those two because they're similar uses in a similar neighborhood. And that's the only reason. There's these two blocks here. We're trying to get the townhomes to have the same designation, same neighborhood, adjacent to each other as tourist home designated. The town doesn't want to do that. It's not the end of the world to me. It's just one thing we feel is more consistent by having similar uses. And, you know, one thing we wanted to do is clarify height and definitions. You might have seen in our bylaw where we removed the stories. The height is the height. If it's 16 meters, 14 meters, 12 meters, and 9.5 meters, that's what we have to build in. It's just been confusing with every time I get a new development planner and I go for an approval on a townhome. Well, is that 2.5 stories, Frank? Is that 2 stories? Is that supposed to be 3 stories? And every time I've had a different planner, I've had a different interpretation. So we've put them back in the stories, but we've changed them to allow the range, and we'll show you that as we go here. And again, conclusion of stage 4 into our overall comprehensive district, and parking requirements. So I'll show you those again. There's some concerns on parking. The town of Cameron removed all parking requirements throughout the town. I disagreed with it. They tripled the amount of bike parking we have to have, which is fine. It's still it's a little excessive, but throughout the whole town of Cameron, they removed pretty well in all districts requirement for any parking. We always build parking in Spring Creek. Our underground parking, I won't sell you a condo if I don't put underground parking in. You know, everyone wants a place for their cars, and we tend to do that. We're trying to just be in conformance, town bylaws be the same. I have been forced to build parking that has been used in Runnicliffe Lodge. I still have 2 titled parking stalls that I could sell. Anyone wants one, they're 30,000. Sell you one today. But you know, I have excess parking in some buildings that haven't been used since 2008. So we've had to go for a few variances on parking in the past. We're 2 or 3 parking unit shy that we couldn't get in underground, and we had to get those variances. So we're changing that. We're going to propose to the town to change that as well, back to having a maximum number of parking and a minimum number of parking. So put a little easier, but we will always build to the maximum we can fit underground in our parkades. That's the intent, because we know people want still a place for the car. We're just trying to be consistent with the town current bylaw when they did those amendments. So just real quick on the entrance to Spring Creek, we are adding a little bit of land into Spring Creek. I did buy this house, the first house as you leave Spring Creek on the left, and it's located right in this area where the L2 is. I had this weird shaped lot, L3. So I bought L1 and L2 off of Ramsey, and the old house is still there. We want to combine these 3 lots to make 2 lots that are perpendicular to the road. It's really and perpendicular to the creek. So it's just a re-subdivision and rejigging of this. Plus this property line of the hotel to the L3 was not at a square angle, it's at a obtuse angle, and that is very difficult for building it. And the construction, you like to build right angles where possible. So we're doing a little jigging of that and bringing this into the ARP. The lands, because it is part of Spring Creek now. We want it to be part of Spring Creek. We want them to be part of our architectural controls. We want them to be part of the Property Owners Association and be part of Spring Creek. So it's something we want to make that line there. We did do some rough designs of the Alexander Hotel, and that's how we know our densities that we can get now for our floors. We do plan to build a spa along the creek edge, and Alexander is a hotel going to be located on the west side as you leave here on the left-hand side. And that's going to be an adult-only hotel with a spa. It's not going to be noisy. The spa was like Banff Springs Hotel, opens at 8, it closes 8 p.m. And if anything, we'll have spa music. It's not going to have people concerned it's going to be like the Malcolm. We're also going to take out some uses that aren't going to be allowed there, like restaurants, like bars, like stuff, to put everyone on the other side of the creek's minds at ease that this is a spa hotel, adult only. And it's tied to the Malcolm by an underground tunnel. And the tunnel's already been designed for that. The Kernick Place Hotel is where the old farmhouse was, my grandfather's old farmhouse. That again is more family-oriented rooms. They're 1, 2, 3 bedroom rooms. With potentially a restaurant facing towards Old Campbell Motors, facing the creek this direction. And it's a small restaurant on the 4th floor facing that way. It's not facing towards the creek this way on this hotel. Again, family-oriented hotel. And that's going to be tied by a plus 15 or 30 timber frame bridge over the road. So you drive under, create a sense of entranceway when you enter into Spring Creek. It's going to be a beautiful enclosed timber frame bridge tying that hotel to the Malcolm. 3 different hotels, but all owned and operated by Spring Creek Resorts, my company. We just give them 3 different identities because they have 3 different purposes, right? Then the Malcolm Hotel. And the Malcolm Hotel is our flagship conference hotel. This just shows originally we were asking for 16 meters of height at the entranceway. People still think I'm asking for that. I'm not. I went back to just what's allowed right now, the 12-meter height with the variances to create tower elements. The 60 meters that you came into Spring Creek would have gave a little more height here or just created tower elements, but I had some pushback from people at the entranceway where I took it out. So if you hear Frank's asking for more height, I'm not asking for more height. That's been removed from the bylaw for the hotels. They're exactly what's in my bylaw right now, which allows for a 3-story building. Again, as you leave Spring Creek, this is just, again, really quick representations with block diagrams, not the design. This is just so we are trying to figure out our bylaw and what we needed for bylaw amendments before we spend the money on detailed design. But just give you a sense and idea of height as you leave Spring Creek. And you know, we'll have 2 single family lots past that will belong to Spring Creek. And then it goes around the corner to our neighbors to the north. Again, I told you about rejigging the lots. This is the existing configuration. And what we're going to be doing, oops, is that green, the green lines are creating 2 lots instead of 3, plus also turn over to the town. If you look on the right-hand drawing here, turn over to town. This is the existing zoning, you know, R1 and our commercial, changing it to rezoning this, making it straight and turning it over to the town, some of our land, again, as you do subdivision, as environmental reserve. So without this subdivision, there would be no environmental reserve dedication given to the town, and that protects the creek bank. As we've done everywhere in Spring Creek, we've done between 6 and 10 meters of dedication to the town of environmental reserve along the creek edge, plus our municipal reserve. So this just allows for that redesignation and turns the environment sensitive lands in those 2 lots or to the town of Cameron ownership. And we're bringing them into our area redevelopment plan, as I said, and into our land use district. Not just showing that on the right, it's just a little bit of amendment to our land that comes into the Spring Creek ARP. Those 2 lots. And Jane, am I going to the right place? Maybe dead. I'll do this way.
It would take through their application.
Oh, protects it. All right. Not sure if it's me or the remote. This just shows the hotel sites. Again, this is showing a 50-meter creek setback line that I'm asking to our new build to line. Instead of 20 meters, be 5 meters closer to this. It shows that this goes right now, currently went through the old house that hung over the creek. These are all campsites along this edge. And same thing on this other side with the shop and gravel parking area for all the equipment, plus cutting through some of the cabins at the backyard. So we're just asking for, instead of 20-meter setback, a 50-meter creek setback here because the chicane I added to the road, again, this used to go straight through like this. A road can be right up to the creek edge. That's 6 to 10 meters of arm reserve, but it's crazy that my buildings can't be. So it's just a request to be consistent before I design these 2 hotel sites. And you can see it again here, the 15 meters. This is the 50 meters of black line. The 20 meters is this line. It affects the constructability of the hotels. We're not asking for all directions. There's going to be areas that we won't be using it, but it's a line that we want for our design as our build to line. Oops. We both hit it. Go back one. Forward one. These are the actual wording and amendments to the bylaw. Like, oops. Sorry, go back. You going back? You want me to? Technology. Again, this had before a variance for up to 5 meters may be granted, and we're asking for it to shall be 15 meters. Again, site design and consideration impacts to the creek all have to be to the satisfaction of the Development Authority. We always, the environment reserve is what we protect as riparian habitat. Our building line doesn't mean, you saw patios, you look at our, the Malcolm, the patios and all that stuff was in with that 20-meter setback. Just right now it says buildings can't be, but patios, landscaping all can be, and will be still maintained by the hotel owner. And again, we're doing the same thing for the ARP amendments to allow for that 15-meter setback and also for these two lots. Right now, this house is at 15 meters. When we redevelop these, we want to make sure that we can still put them in the same spot and follow the guidelines of the town at 15 meters, where we can put these two dwelling units and meet the minimum requirement. Is maximum house size can be 325, and we're under that. Even at the 15-meter setback, we're around 300. There's a little graph down there. I think one's 280, one's 300. So we don't even meet the minimum or maximum size of the house can be at the 15-meter setback. And there's more technical stuff, but I'm just showing it here because it's what we're presenting to the town council as well. Again, updated from 200 to 250 hotel units. And those both updates in the land use bylaw and in the ARP. And again, bringing in stage 4, as I mentioned to you, we're bringing stage 4 into the development and reducing it from 1,200 units. We're going to be stated in the bylaw, be a maximum of 1,000. And stage 4 is roughly 258 units. We give a guesstimate in our, there's a range, but that's sort of the guesstimate that we expect to brought in that stage. And it's 2 condo building sites, large condo building sites, townhomes here and here, and potentially here could be stacked townhomes at the end. And this is the zoning map that the town uses, where we actually zone these lands for that Spring Creek district. We have PD, this is our municipal reserve. A trail will continue along this back property line, and this is environmental reserve here. We are working with the homeowners to the owners of the land to the south. They're going in for rezoning as well in May to propose to put, I think, 4 single-family lots in this area at the end of that cul-de-sac, plus land for the hospice, plus 1 large area for his home in here. This has been on the books since 30 years. 1990, I think, was the first time it came forward to council to get developed. It's had many different owners. There's been people trying to put over 350 homes in the back here. But Bernie and his wife Janet proposing is reasonable. The only thing they know I disagree with them on is 2 single lots in this area. Eagle Terrace, everywhere I've had to give up 10% municipal reserve and all my environmental reserve. They're trying to avoid doing that. And I've asked them to consider putting their environmental reserve along the creek, as we all have to do, and putting this land as municipal reserve. So we can continue the trails along the creek edge, and they create a park there. You don't want, my ARP says no physical connection to the South Camera habitat patch. It's not even in the urban growth boundary. So I will be proposing, as part of their public hearing, amendments to their proposal to environmental reserve these lands and municipal reserve in these lands here to create continuity. People think this is my area redevelopment. No, it's not my area redevelopment plan. It's the town of Canberra's area redevelopment plan. It's a town of Canberra land use bylaw. It belongs to everyone. I'm just asking, making amendments to them. And the town makes amendments to bylaws all the time, as they did with the parking requirements throughout the town. So this will be something I still want to propose for council to consider, making this municipal reserve and environmental reserve here. And I agree with what personally, I agree with what he's doing on this lands here. You might all have different opinions, but this has been going on for 30 years, and it's time we made a decision on this. And that he protects the rest of his lands with a conservation easement, as I did in Eagle Terrace. I gave my 10% municipal reserve, plus I put half the land up in Eagle Terrace, 75 acres, we donated to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and to Nature Conservancy of Canada, and had a conservation easement put on those lands so the future would not get developed. Same thing I feel Brennan and them should be doing here. It's been a conservation easement on the balance of the land. So 10 years, 20 years from now, someone doesn't come forward with another 200 home proposal. This is what we're agreeing to. Let's make sure we agree to that. Well, sometimes it goes, sometimes it doesn't. Run, Jennifer, run. The people on Zoom, you guys got the chart first. And all we're doing showing us on this chart is adding those lands at the entrance into our development. Just in our ARP, we have a stats chart showing how much municipal reserve we're providing. So you see municipal reserve here, 14.2%. Other open space, 4%. We also gave away a lot of land, 13.8% of these lands for environmental reserve. A lot of people don't know the boardwalk was in my property at one time. I had that land went right up behind the Rosencrown, right up to Main Street. So when the first subdivision I did, I gave away all the creeks and creek banks and shore. And as we go along, I give away, don't dedicate the environment reserve creek edge. But yeah, the whole boardwalk, everything right up to Main Street was in my parcel at one time. And just our other stats, we had to update, as you can see here, we updated from 200 to 250. And the other big one, the hotel related commercial, because we're adding the spa, was never really thought of before. And then max local commercial. So that is another thing people were asking me about, why we're adding roughly 1,000 square meters. And I'll show you that when we get to that. The town had a conflicting issues in their commercial bylaw. This is updating the stories. We were removing the stories in the bylaw. That's what we're proposing, because this is really the guiding is the heights. But concerns, we put it back in. I've never built a 4.5 story building. It's been less than that. It's been 4 stories. You know, we built some 3 in this height zone, some 3 stories, some 4 stories. So just put what we're actually been doing for the last 20 years. 12 meters, these are both 2.5 stories. This is generally 3 stories along the creek, are generally 2 to 3 stories. Or your place is 2 stories. Other people along the creek are 3 stories, but rarely have we done a 2.5 story, and a house story is sort of like a building to the roof, a half of. And anyways, Garage Spring Creek, they're 2 or 3 stories. So just trying to be consistent, because I've had to deal with planners over the years going, well, you know, you're supposed to be 2.5 stories, and it's just been confusing, every different interpretation. So we're not asking for more height. Height is driven by the height bylaw, maximum heights. Just a clarification in the bylaw, so we're not arguing with a new planner all the time. This is the commercial section. And when I did stage 3, the town of Cameron administration, they wanted me to do 25% of my street frontage going down Spring Creek Gate as commercial, live-work studios or commercial ready. I disagreed with them. I argued with them, but they wanted that in. And when we started designing Timberstone, we realized we can't do 25%. Anything over 10% of the floor area of that main floor requires me to build concrete construction. I'm not going to, for a commercial building going down Spring Creek Gate, I don't believe there's going to be a market for it. And they were trying to force me to do it. And I said, well, and there's a contradicting thing too. I was out of quota. They only allowed 2,000 cubic meters. So I wasn't even allowed to do it on one part. And another part, they're forcing me to do it. So you guys, it's contradictory here. So you know, you got to pick one way or the other. So I've had them change it, or I've changed it to we only want to do the 1 hour fire rating. We don't want to do concrete 3 hour fire rating. The maximum you can do is 10% of a floor at any block. And I took it from a required, was a required minimum 25% to where possible part. So it's flexible for me. If there's a demand for commercial, maximum 10% of that floor area, I might do a 150 square meter unit in a building. We do have in Timberstone was where it came up. Right now on my Timberstone approval, that's a building we're digging right now. I do have a live-work studio planned in there, but I do have a doctor's office that wants that whole space and want to open a medical clinic here. 2 neurologists out of Calgary, and they want to put a family clinic in there as well. Now that I like, that's something I think for our community be wonderful to have. They're working out of our seniors building right now part-time. They come and they do assessments and send the seniors and other people in town, but they also want to open a family practice on that corner. I don't have the quota. I can't do it right now. I don't, and over my 2,000 square meters. So I don't care if they make that 2,100 square meters and don't require me to build anymore. But right now they want me to, and that's administration, not me. And so I changed it from must do Again, there's may and shells to where possible. So I have that flexibility. And we do have the parking. People worry about the parking. I'm required in my parking bylaw, 1 parking stall for every 46 square meters of commercial. That requires about 20 stalls going that direction, south on Spring Creek Gate. And I think we have over 36 stalls will be going down on Spring Creek Gate. If we build no commercial, that's just extra stalls for the community for commercial uses. Everything on Spring Creek Drive and Spring Creek Gate is for the commercial uses of Spring Creek. The Muse roads and your underground parking, your apartment buildings is for the condominium boards and for visitor parking and use. But Spring Creek Drive is meant for loading zones and parking for commercial uses. So I originally had taken all this parking out because the town of Cameron and every other bylaw the town of Cameron has, they've taken it out. I put it back in because some concerns of the neighborhood and community I heard from other people. But instead of being a minimum, what they made us try to do before, we made that a maximum because they don't require any right now, but we're putting that in as our maximum. And a minimum of this, I must do 80% of this as a minimum. So it gives me a range that I'm not having to go for variances if I need 5 less parking stalls, I just can't fit underground, that there's a range available. And again, I've always built out as much as I can. We've been almost every time right on the number, like Timberstone, we're right on the number, what was required in the old bylaw. And I was always still try and go for that to try and get as much parking as I can because my people want to buy that. That's what people want to buy from me. And why wouldn't I build that and sell that if I can? But it's also just dealing with planning and variances all the time. It's always the struggle. So we've amended it and put it back in. I'm going to be honest, the town of Cameron administration might not support it. They might want it taken out, and that's just honest. And there's their recommendation to council at the end of the day, because they removed it in just about every other zone in town that there's no parking requirements. They have bike parking like crazy. Then we need like 400 bike stalls per building. Those are the main updates I wanted to do and trying to educate everyone what we're trying to do for the zoning changes. And I guess if I didn't answer your concerns or question, this is the opportunity for anyone to ask those online or in person here. I just open the floor now. If I didn't clearly get your concerns or explain everything, why we're doing these amendments, feel free to ask. Sorry, it's not on our property. It's on the land behind mine. It's not in Spring Creek. It's across the creek. It's the South Cameron lands. If you go down in South Cameron, go to the end of the cul-de-sac. I don't know. Can you put that drawing up again?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let's see if I can put a drawing up again.
Does that mean to repeat the questions too?
Yeah, I will.
Just wondering.
Yeah, that's great. Can you put it up on here? So the question is, where is the hospice going to be located? It's not decided. The Hospice Society has been working with Bernie and Jen for about a year. They've been trying to raise money, and they've been trying to. The Bernie and Jen McCaffrey own the land. They bought it about a year and a half ago off previous developers, and it's 20 acres of land. I don't have it all on this slide here, but it's basically all the land. It goes way. I'm just showing a quarter of the land. It goes way down lower than what's shown here. It's not undeveloped land. It's swampy land. It's very marginal land for really development. Not that you can't raise land. All Spring Creek was roughly the same way when it was before it was a trail park campground. My dad and my uncle put 4 or 5 feet of gravel fill, coast slag. Every time we dig a foundation, it's Russian roulette what we're going to find in there. We find the old shaft of a truck, or found some horseshoes from back in the day when they had horses here. It's been sometimes interesting what we find buried in there. No dead body parts yet, but yeah, so it's marginal land, but they plan to do some lots that they plan to sell, I assume, and the hospice land down at the end of that college. And it'd be a wonderful place for it. It's going to be very quiet, might be a little smelly, but close to the sewage treatment plant.
That's not final.
Not final, no. But they're going for zoning themselves in May, and I think end of May will be their public hearing to to amend their lands. So my amendments are going probably first week of June to council for first reading, and amendments with public hearing this. You all have an opportunity to speak again if you have any concerns or want to support it. I appreciate it. Will be sometime, I think, end of June, first week of July will be the public hearing. Go ahead.
Just a couple of questions. First of all, will this presentation
Yes, you know, I'll do another prepare another presentation. We're still working with the town on the amendments. So, I mean, and Nathan, my planner, is going away for a couple weeks. When he comes back, we have to work on the staff report for council. Once we firm up the amendments, because they're still fluid, they're still changing. Like, will they want to leave it? I'm proposing, I haven't talked to Nathan about putting the parking back in. They're the ones that agreed to taking them out. And say, look, there's some concerns in the community. Are you okay putting them back in with a range? And they might say yes, they might say no. So once we have a firm bylaw that no, I'm not doing any amendments, we're going to be updating this presentation as well. And I will definitely, we'll send it out to everyone. We'll send it out as a PDF or PowerPoint.
be great if we had
The question was, I'm just going to repeat it for the people on Zoom about notice and more notice for this is a last minute thing at a board meeting last week. A lot of people said they had some concerns, and my understanding there's some due dates coming up for comments to the town. And so we did rush to get this in. So if you had comments for the town, you had opportunities to give them. You still have opportunity all the way up to the public hearing to give comments to the town. So it really is a rush as more people were concerned they had a rush to get them in. And there's misinformation going out there in the community. And so it was short notice, I realize.
I'm a new resident. I was quite happy to see that in the area that we talked about today, across from the mountain, small way to develop lights that flood by regularly or happen in past areas. It's used quite a bit.
Yes.
Quite a bit there. I'm just wondering, develop that, we're going to lose
The question is about the rink we had this year at the Malcolm. I'll give you a little history of the rink. My father and uncle, when it was mobile home park, we did a rink every year, and roughly in that same location. Past number of years, we moved it way down at the end of the trailer park because there wasn't room. We were working on these sites and the old shop and everything was there. This year we put it back there because the shop was taken down. It was a great place for that next couple of years, 2-3 years. We'll be starting in May this year, the Village Square and the water pond in the Village Square. And so there's a water feature in the Village Square, and the town of Canberra will be flooding that as another rink. They'll be maintaining it and looking after it. The Property Owners Association will, because it's part of the MR agreement, Municipal Reserve Agreement we have with the town to maintain, we'll look after in the summertime, the shrubs and the trees, and make sure the fountains in that area there is the water safe and stuff like that. It's not meant for swimming, but it will be a rink. And that's always, because we always had a rink as a kid. We always looked at a rink. I've always done it since I've owned the trailer park. And so that's a feature we want to maintain in Spring Creek.
really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Was there any other plans for any other kind of, I haven't come to school.
Yeah.
And, you know, bringing the community together, gathering places like what you just provided, found out there.
Yeah, the Village Square is meant really as a gathering place for everyone. You know, I mean, now it's the whole intent why we built that there. Across the road, there is a daycare going to be going in, although we don't, Ken, my partner here, is going to be the one opening a Montessori daycare here in about a year and a bit. It's Ken Redauer. She's a teacher for 20 years, French immersion teacher. And that's going across the road in the Arnica building. We have two big playgrounds being put into the big park across between Arnica and Jack Pine Lodge, and picnic tables. And we'll do half of that this year. We'll build a trail from the road to the new bridge we installed last year, and everything on the west side will get finished off landscaping this year, and the Arnica playgrounds and landscaping will get done next year. But that whole park will be another great amenity space to get in place. Again, even though we don't have a lot of kids in Spring Creek, I've always wanted to create a community where it had all ages of life. you know, and we really want to see the intent long-term is kids maybe go to the seniors building and grandpa's dot one and they read to them, vice versa, do coloring for them. So there's really some synergies we really see having also daycare in Spring Creek, even though there isn't a lot of kids in Spring Creek. No, it's been.
You've done a fabulous job. Being here. And again, you've done. I noticed that Rundle and you have really well managed. Hear big noises, we're in Glacier Rock, and it's great. It seems like in the business, we're getting into more of that kind of thing. One of the big concerns that we have as people is management that you have like a run. It's when you get too many people getting into certain size rooms. This is very remarkable. Everything goes, who manages that?
So the question is concerns over probably tourist home units and concerns over noise and different things with maybe different people operating the tourist home units. And all I can say is we don't operate all of them. We maybe operate half of that. And there's individual people operate their own, and most of them are very responsible and they do look after. But Greg can maybe I'll speak to this from an all boards meeting. We, you know, the biggest thing is you know, you always have the right to call for noise, the town of Cam or land use bylaw services up to 10, up to they're available, but also the RCMP if someone's really not meeting the noise bylaws. So there's that side of it. But we are also working with all boards to look at hiring one security company for all the Spring Creek, for all the buildings, for, you know, my construction sites, for all this, that we have a contact number, because sometimes bylaw will never show, sometimes RCMP, you hate bothering them. It's really not meant they should be dealing with this. But maybe Greg, I don't know, would you want to speak to that a little more, Greg, on the? Yep. Yep.
But the tourist home buildings have their own items.
So can I just repeat it to everyone on Zoom? So Greg was just explaining at the AGM, its intent of the POA and the all boards to propose a comprehensive security program for all buildings in all of Spring Creek, so that we have one contact number to go to if there's issues within Spring Creek. Instead of bothering RSMP and bylaw, our security company can contact RSMP and bylaw if they really feel it's an issue. I think is making that consistent throughout, I think will put a lot of this stuff to bed. And Greg has a question.
Yeah, so many of us received from the town of Kernick a summary of their perception of the summary of what people are. Can you help me go through the 10 items for everybody online? Talk about online
Do you mind bringing it up here, Greg? So Greg has a letter that was sent to everyone and just wants to make sure what areas I've covered, what areas I have not covered. That's the same letter everyone online would have received. So number one was increased number of visitor accommodation units from the 200 to 250. I think I covered that. That's the hotels, all three hotels. Increase in the floor area local commercial, I talked about the increase of 1,000 square meters. That's something I've changed to them requiring me to have to do that to, I want that as an option and make sure that there is some quota there because it's contradictory at this time. Again, increase in number of tourist homes we talked about. The parking requirements to align with the town's area-wide parking requirements. I put it back in. I'm not sure if the town will agree to that. Creek setbacks for the parcels, for the lots and stuff I did address, I think, for you guys. And the boundaries of those commercial and those R1 lots, just small amendments for those. There's small PD district that I didn't really talk about here is a small amendment that because our plans don't align with the town's plan. So they've asked us just to update it. It's moving the boundary a couple meters. Expanding the boundaries of our Spring Creek residential district to include stage 4 was another question. Explain that we couldn't do that till last year. We can do that now. And just updating all the figures and tables to go with that because it's all statistics have to be updated. And removing the limitation number of stories, I put that back in. As I've explained to you guys, it was a concern. I just put it back and make sure it was more clear to what we're actually building at this time. I think those were all the items that the town of Camera identified in the land use bylaw changes. Go ahead, Barb.
2 questions. Can you explain how the parking will work like the restaurant and
Sure. Sure. I'll give an example. So the Iron Goat is about 180 seats, if you've been out to my restaurant up there, and there's about 10,000 square feet of commercial. What we have here is a restaurant of 120 seats, so it's about a third smaller, about the same amount of commercial, about one more grocery store. Up there, we have about 45 parking stalls for everything. In Timberstone and underground and on street, we have roughly about close to, I think it's 45 to 50 stalls as well. So even though the restaurant is smaller, we have approximately number of stalls between the Muse Roads and underground parking. We have 23 commercial and 12, I think it's visitor. So there's roughly the same amount of stalls we would have. Now, don't get me wrong, during go to time, you can't find a parking stall. But we also have approximately 100 parking stalls on Spring Creek Drive that's meant for commercial. When I was driving through here at 1 o'clock today, there are 75 empty stalls today when I drove through at 1 o'clock. We're also building, as I told you, about another 40 stalls going south on Spring Creek Drive, and that's where really you're going to see most of that overflow parking. Purposely, we changed all the signs this year with paid parking coming in. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the town of Camera is going to overflow. All the people are going to come into Spring Creek. We already made the stalls last year in front of from the Opera House to the Malcolm for our parking only. And I know someone's contacted the town to try and get them to enforce the bylaws, the parking signs a little more. From here, this the way was 2-hour parking max. And some areas where there used to be loading bays, we changed that to 30-minute parking. So it's not parking isn't allowed, parking is allowed, but it's 30-minute max to try and make sure we use the parking appropriately. My biggest concern is parking be pushed from not what we have for commercial. I think we have adequate stalls underground in Timberstone and on the street here for the commercial that we are putting into Spring Creek. My concern is just like, you know, when it's a weekend, we know people are parking here and their strollers are coming out and the bikes are coming out and they're going into town. So it's something we have to monitor as a community association. I believe we might have to change this in front of the Malcolm Hotel to 2-hour only parking to tighten it up so people aren't going for hours downtown. And the town might have to create a parking registration thing on street here too. We are doing that in Timberstone. We have a QR code when you go underground. You'll have to register if you're going to Bridget Bar or if you're going to the Willow grocery store or if you're visiting someone in that building, visitor stall. So they'll have to register. And that's part of the security thing that we believe we'll be doing in buildings. And one thing the Timberstone is hopefully asking if we have issues, asking our security guy to maybe go and double check that people have registered and they're actually going to the commercial use, not parking underground and going downtown. So it is going to be a management thing, and it definitely is going to be a management issue with the town going to paid parking. We're going to have to monitor as a community.
Frank, it's Alan here from Creekstone. May I ask a little bit more along that same line of conversation? I had kind of submitted a question, but I think one of the things that we wonder about at Creekstone is as things continue to evolve, and you also mentioned the paid parking in downtown, obviously there's going to be more people looking for parking within Spring Creek, and you've been working to identify where people should be parking and put limits along things like Spring Creek Drive. I think what we wonder a little bit about is.
One
is
question, just for
the
everyone on
Muse
Zoom
roads
was, will the
are
daycare
general.
be open on weekends? And it is something we are considering if the market demand is there for it, we potentially, and we have staffing. That's going to be the two challenges. Considering having that open for weekends for people that are, because we do have a lot of weekenders in Spring Creek, a lot of people visiting for weekends, that potentially having that available to use. Yeah. Any other questions here before I hop over to Zoom questions? You can come back after. I'll just see if there's some questions on Zoom. I'm sorry, some people on Zoom, they weren't sure what I was pointing at. That's a disadvantage of you guys being on Zoom. One question is, will the wastewater from stage 4 units be pumped out along the existing infrastructure concerned they might be overwhelmed? No, the sewer has been totally designed for 1,200 units. We're only doing 1,000. All the sewer lines go to the lift station I built as you leave Spring Creek towards the roundabout on the left-hand side. That lift station I built, and that pumps it all the way to the sewage treatment plant. A lot of Bovella Trail ties in that, but I built that back in 2008. All the infrastructure has been sized, water, sewer, storm, for 1,200 units, and we're only going to be building up to 1,000. Yeah, question was about under visitor parking. That will be on either on Muse roads for each condo building or underground. There are plans for a third road entrance exit Spring Creek on the south side. No, there's no future plans. That road has been designed for 6,000 vehicle trips a day, entering from the roundabout. Main Street has been designed for 3,000, and it's that's one reason they made it very difficult to leave Main Street, is to disencourage people from shortcutting through Spring Creek. Now let's talk about the lights, new lights in town. We see more town and camera trucks driving through here, shortcutting through, than you see anything else. So the town says they're still waiting for parts for that lights. That there is still some outdated equipment. They're still waiting that will make them work better. I'm not happy with them. It's very backed up all the way to the roundabout past some days. And so, but I'm giving the town a chance to see if they get the right equipment and get it dialed in. I personally believe they got to extend their right turn lanes. So the stacking needs to be extended past the Coast Hotel. Just my opinion. But right now, we got to see how that works out. But we do have a way to do a traffic study to see who's shortcutting through Spring Creek. If it becomes a problem in a year or two, they easily can do that to see vehicles that are not really stopping in Spring Creek, who's shortcutting through Spring Creek. So one was just asked a question, why the increased number of tourist home and in townhomes. I thought I answered that, but it's really to the townhomes would only be on the east side townhomes adjacent to tourist home buildings. So if a tourist home condo building was there, potentially the townhomes adjacent to that, because they're comparable uses, and that was the intent. If I don't get it, it's not the end of the world. I'm just, you like to put comparable uses beside each other. So if there's going to happen, it's be less conflict, and there's a market for it. There's a market for tourist home townhomes. How many parking stalls included in new hotels? We have close to one per bedroom, and then also some bus parking allowed as well. But it's close to one per bedroom is generally what we try to do. You'll notice a lot of times that our parking lot over there is full. You'll go, oh, well, they're going to have a big problem. The parking lots for both those hotels will be open during the day for whether there's a conference on. And it's always, you're hoping that when we have a conference, it was designed for 300 people, that right now half the people can only stay there, and the other half have to stay at other hotels in town. So hopefully when we do have the capacity for the other two hotels there, that the majority of the conferences, those people will be staying there, but they'll also have access, if they're not staying there, to those underground parking lots. I've seen many times where that surface parking lot has been full, and I went into the Malcolm garage and it was half empty. So sometimes people just park there because they think that's the only place to park. And we all try to find, we all are lazy. We all try and find the closest parking stall to our front door. And sometimes we got to maybe walk half a block. There's a question about current Muse roads, say visitor parking 24 hours. This is up to the boards of each condo board. That visitor parking on the Muse road is yours. I did try to put consistent signage on last year for you, spent the cost, because before it just had visitor parking, had no hours on it, and people were parking buses and motorhomes and cars for weeks on end. So we put that, and I updated the signage for the condo boards to try and enforce that themselves. Again, the security guy we hire might be something that he marks the tires on them to see if they're actually moving, if he thinks someone's been there for more than 24 hours. And it's up to the condo boards how they manage their own parking. But if we can have a constant policy between all boards and through the POA, just makes it more consistent. And I don't want neighbor putting notes on someone's. You want someone that has some authority, because we still want to be neighborly to each other. We don't want neighbors doing that against each one. I think having a security company do it and being consistent is how the all boards can deal with that.
Frank?
Someone thanked me for the clarification. At phase 4, what would be the definite to get approval? I mean, the majority of residents, the person's asking for stage 4, is it a vote by the people in Spring Creek? No, it's not a vote by the people in Spring Creek for any of these bylaw amendments. It is a vote of the Town of Camera Council. You as a resident, I might remind you to read your title. There's an encumbrance on your title, a caveat that says you agree to everything I'm doing in the future. If you haven't read it, it's not my first rodeo. But second thing is, you are welcome to speak at the public hearing and send letters if you have some concerns. It is not a vote of the people of Spring Creek. It is my ARP has been approved and the council's final decision, not individual people. So we're just trying to read the questions, see if there's anything we haven't really dealt with. Person said the tourist homes don't create a community, do they? It's to me, visitors are just as welcome in our community as weekenders, as full-time residents. I always say to people that are against development, we could have rolled up the sidewalks here 1980. None of you be here, right? We could roll them up right now and other people won't be here. But, I believe in an open community, but I also believe I wanted Spring Creek from day one to have more full-time residents and have lights on than you see in other parts of Canmore and Three Sisters Silvertip. And we do. We do have probably about 60% or 65, I added up the other day, because our seniors building is 100%, Moraine Ridge 100%. Other buildings are really a lot of full-time resident people planning to be full-time residents, but there's a small component, 30% is allowed for tourist homes, and that doesn't require people to rent them by the night. I lived in Runnicliff Lodge for 6, 7, 8 years, and Lori, she lived there. We enjoyed it, and I never had an issue that I would say was that from someone staying overnight. I think I had more issues sometimes. I think I was busted more in the hot tub after hours by Greg's wife than anyone. That's minor stuff. What's a Creekstone? I did not answer the Creekstone question. I asked freely then. Someone wanted to ask a question on Creekstone.
Hey, Frank, it's Alan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Alan.
I think that the Creekstone thing, and you talked a little bit about it, but one of the questions sort of just relates to something you touched on very nicely, which is, all the efforts you're going to provide parking, but also the town doing paid parking. Increasingly, people are going to be looking for places to park, whether they're coming to commercial outlets within Spring Creek or just visiting our town. And the question that Creekstone has is, we don't really have any effective means to police parking along the Muse roads that we're aware of. So we don't believe that that's where people coming to, walk around downtown should be parking, or coming to shop downtown should be parking. Do you have any thoughts on how to sort of handle that? And I guess you did touch on the possibility that that might be a POA thing, but any other advice?
Just on parking on Muse roads, and it's something that the signage might have to change there too, from 24 hours to 2-hour max. And we do have from 7 up to 7 p.m. And then after that, they can stay from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So it really allows some to come there at 5 o'clock and stay till 9 o'clock if you do the 2 hours each side. But it's something that
I guess it's also private property, right? So
It
the
is
signs
private
could
property,
act-
yeah.
The signs could actually be modified to say visitor parking,
Yes.
Creekstone Mountain private property, if that's what the owners of
Yes.
Creekstone felt they were really eager to do.
And you can put on the signs, you know, if you're not a resident or visitor of this building, you will be towed. And sometimes, and that's where you might have to change the signage again. And it's
Okay.
something I think all the boards, it'd be good if you're going to do it, that all the boards do it and all the signage change. And then
Yeah,
it's
I think
something
we
that you
agree
might,
that-
if it's an issue, you might actually need our security guy to, you know, on the weekends, marking tires, right? Himself.
But let's see how it goes. And if it comes to something like that, then maybe we will change signage. And I agree, it would be nice if we sort of did it kind of as a community-wide effort where we all kind of agreed on it so that something we do doesn't just push people into somebody else's space.
Agreed.
Thanks very much.
I think that's all the questions we have. If someone on Zoom, if we didn't answer your question, please resubmit it before we end this. Is there any other questions from in here? Greg?
I was asked to see if there was contact. People have future questions. Annually.
You know, yeah. Well, for anything to do with the zoning changes you're talking, Greg? Yes, it should be me. You know, I mean, everyone's welcome. Frank@springcreekmb.com at any time. You're welcome to send me a question. You're welcome to call me. If you can't, you know, don't know my contact information, you're welcome to send Jennifer, send her your question or call her and she'll forward your questions to me as well. If you can't remember my email address, or if you want to call her or send her emails anytime. You know, this is my wheelhouse, this kind of stuff. I don't tarry or construction. This is my side of what I do is the planning side of Spring Creek. But you're welcome, like I said, to me or to Jennifer. No, there's no problem at all. Any future questions or concerns? And you said someone, thank you for the presentation. That's nice. Excellent. With that, I think that's everything. Again, thank you guys. I know it's short notice. There is a chance I might do when we update the stuff and actually get the Town of Canmore administration signing off on what I'm presenting, because I've been trying to listen to feedback. We've changed stuff on the commercial side, we've changed stuff here. Once we have a final version that's going to council, I might do one other Zoom or presentation, and that would include the whole community of Canmore. There's a lot of misinformation out there as well as this thing circulates, some misinformation, what we're doing here. So you might have another opportunity, another open house, but if not, you also have the opportunity at the public hearing, and any words of support as well is always appreciated. So thank you guys for coming out tonight, and thank you for, we had 32 to 36 people on Zoom, so that was nice too. Yeah, thanks guys.